Alright, I'm just gonna sit down, draw something real simple, real easy. No big deal. You've been having a tough time keeping on top of editing. You've got crazy art block right now. Let's just draw something fun and simple and... Boy, howdy, who could have possibly foreseen this? Who among us could have predicted that in an attempt to draw something low stakes and easy, that I would end up doing exactly none of that and also end up getting carried away drawing a bunch of NPCs that are all not alive. That's right, none of these NPCs are anyone that my D&D characters can interact with at all, at least as far as I know. If you haven't already, meet my kobold paladin, Fing, who has been an absolute pleasure to play for about the last year or so, and fingers crossed for Fing to continue to be a character that I play for a long time. I've recently started a D&D journal for him, which I record and upload for your enjoyment on this here, the Lady Split Chin channel, and you can hear a much more in-depth version of his early adventures by watching that video. But essentially, he was found alone and was picked up by a group of traveling paladins who quickly realized this kobold was more than just a little yellow lizard. They taught him to speak, they took care of him, taught him their ways, but on one of their adventures, his paladin friends were overtaken by some evil creature or something, because Fing doesn't actually know. The paladins put him into hiding, and when Fing emerged from his hiding spot, he found that none of his companions had survived the encounter. Fing held a ceremony for each fallen companion, and in this ceremony, he took upon himself the Oath of the Crown, the same oath that his friends had taken, and he didn't fully understand the commitment that he was making, but he had a deep passion burning in his heart, and somebody blessed him for that. Which is consequently why I am drawing NPCs that do not exist as living creatures in the current universe as far as I know. The game master recently asked me to come up with names for Fing's fallen paladin companions, and so, you know, went and did my thing and came up with names and ages and races and appearance and a brief personality description as well as artwork, because I just can't leave well enough alone. When I draw a group of people, I do my best to at least render them one at a time so that I can talk about that character as they are on screen for your convenience, and so I don't have to keep referencing an off-screen character. But because this was supposed to be a quick and easy drawing, I worked all over the place with sketches and colors and then rendering their faces and then the armor or clothing last. It's not my usual strategy and it makes for a weird speed draw, I'm so sure of it. And I also did my best to not do it super often, but I did flip the canvas a few more times than I usually do in this drawing, which I apologize. I'm sure that's annoying to see, but hopefully the speed draw is sped up enough that those few times that I did flip the canvas, it doesn't matter too much. And last but not least, before we get real invested in this drawing, I do want to say that the colors and symbols are not necessarily accurate. As a character, Fing has never actually physically been to Caritania, the city, where all of his paladin friends hail from. He was sort of found in the woodlands surrounding the main populated area, and because most of our time has been spent basically on the entire opposite end of the continent, it hasn't really come up as a significant plot point. Also, I never bothered to reach out and ask about symbols and armor and colors and things like that. I guess not that you guys would have known that there was a discrepancy unless I referenced it later in Fing's journal, but you know, I have the need to be overly honest about when I realize I'm doing something that is not particularly accurate. So now that all that is settled, let's talk about each of the characters, not in the order that they are on screen, but in the order of the way that I think it would be easiest for you guys to figure out who I'm talking about. Starting with our biggest paladin boy, Aemilius Vitalion. Believe it or not, Aemilius is just a human, about in his mid-30s, no half anything mixed in there, though most people refuse to believe that he doesn't at least have some sort of giant's blood in his veins. Because of his unusual size and stature, his armor and claymore all have to be very, very customized to suit him, which is something he's a little bit bashful about. His resting demeanor and large size make him an incredibly intimidating presence, but many who are close to him like to say that if Aemilius were any sort of giant, he would definitely be a gentle giant. The next character on our list is is conveniently the lovely but intense lady who is on screen at the moment. Meet Rusonia Monticus. She is an ASMR paladin, though she prefers to allow people to believe that she is just a human. Most people incorrectly assume her to be just a human, but people also incorrectly assume her to be much older than she actually is. She is only a couple years older than Aemilius, but her hair has been graying since she turned 20, and her face seems to hold the creases of every expression she makes, but she embraces both of these features of herself. She enjoys the respect that the perceived maturity affords her, and also just outright enjoys the smile lines and the white streaks that now decorate the braids she makes in her hair. Rusonia is every bit as strong as her presence might suggest, with a firm voice and formidable muscles. She loves to spar and wrestle, especially when it's with opponents above her weight class. Her sole mission when she began her career as a soldier was to become proficient in as many different types of weapons as possible, and to never be caught in a situation where she found herself without a means to defend her or her companions, though she has always been partial to polearms. She felt them to be both underestimated and underappreciated for their utility, and something about that tugs at her heartstrings. Our third character, Titus Carvilius, is the quintessential paladin, and he has been for most of his 237 dwarven years. From the moment he laid hands on his first warhammer, unwavering faith and loyalty burned in his heart. Titus has seen many a warhammer, but his favorite is the magic-infused warhammer he found over 100 years ago, named Titania. But despite having lived through hundreds of battles and unsavory experiences, he retains not only his physical and arcane abilities, but also his benevolent and almost fatherly disposition. There's mischief in his eyes, a smile hiding under the bushy mustache, and always a well-timed and well-placed quip after a long day of struggles. Many people find it odd that a tiefling would end up in a paladin's line of work, but Umidia Venator Restituta, or Uma, makes both a striking and invaluable addition to any team. Many an unwise person has whispered under their breath that she is far too pretty to be spending the prime years of her tiefling life as a soldier, but no one has been brave enough to say it out loud. Even just watching in the way that she carries herself, every movement precise, every word intentional, people quickly realize she's far too intimidating to be anything else. Time spent with Uma would result in the realization that she is one of the most faithful people that you might ever meet. You would find that her hair is braided with protective prayers into them, that her ritual ceremonies were conducted with such deference that traces of blessings could be found long after the arcana was dispelled or moved. Her divine smites burn with a radiance to rival the sun, and occasionally, when you see her walking in the corner of your eye, her large set of barbed horns look a little more like a halo. And our last character of the collection, Cassius Cicero. Incredibly dangerous with a longsword in his hand and equally dangerous without. His spellcasting abilities are rivaled by very few. Because of his half-elven blood, many genuinely found Cassius to be beautiful, in the same way that porcelain sculptures and old paintings are beautiful. However, if there were a list of things likely to happen, Cassius Cicero becoming a fully sworn paladin of Caritania was not on that list. As a child, Cassius was a wiry, scrappy troublemaker, and as a teen, he was outspoken and gangly. When he joined the army, no matter the fervor of his workouts or the size of his meal, peers told him that no amount of dedication made him cut out for this line of work. It's just genetics. The next day, he showed up to roll call, silent and deadly serious, with the pointed tips of his ears freshly cut off. Nobody doubted his sincerity after that day. And that is Fing's original paladin group: Aemilius, Rusonia, Titus, Uma, and Cassius. What a lovely and skilled group of friends, and what a fun, useful set of abilities that definitely behoove and benefit us as D&D characters actively frolicking in this world. No, but a couple of people have made a similar comment on Fing's backstory when I bring it up in various videos, that it's a really cool way to get that paladin motivation, but it is a little dark. And in general, my backstories do tend to be on the darker side. I'm a sucker, what can I say, for a strong, tragic, motivation, and I think that happy people rarely leave the comfort of their homes to slay dragons and save the world, unless forced to. But Fings in particular, as much as I did want those paladins to be an available connection, I told the DM that if anybody did actually survive the encounter, Fing would have to have absolutely no knowledge of it, because if he knew, he would never have gone to join a new party in a completely different kingdom, as he is an incredibly loyal character that would never leave a friend behind knowing that they had survived. So about here in the speed draw, we're about to kick it up a notch. Prepare your eyes for footage that is sped up by I think over 1000%. This was a very long process. I got to rewatch, or at least re-listen to, because my eyes were elsewhere, season 4 of Castlevania, season 1 of Castlevania Nocturne, and about half of Death Note. So, you know, that's kind of a testament to how much time was spent hunched over my drawing desk. It was an intense week, to say the least. I sped up this half of the drawing process in particular, though, because the entire time I was just doing the same thing, coloring the same process, working on the gambesons, armor, the belts, and any accessories that they might have. And since they are a group, everything is the same color, and at least while working on it, it felt really repetitive, so I was kind of worried that watching it would also be incredibly repetitive. One of the best decisions I made was realizing that I could select and copy and paste the star emblem from Rusoniaa's chestplate and use the various resized tools settings, so I didn't have to fully re-render the stars every time it appeared in someone's armor. Obviously, there was a little bit of work to make sure the lighting still made sense and things like that, but it saved me a lot of time, or at least it felt like it did, and stuff like that makes me really grateful for digital art, because thinking of not being able to do that traditionally makes me cry. But to keep me from going insane working from armor to armor, and to show a little bit of their various personalities, I did want each of their armor sets to be a little bit unique while still having the overall same aesthetic, since they're from the same place. Cassius, I think, has the most obviously different armor. He's the only one without a chestplate, and while he is technically a paladin, spellcasters tend to rely on magic armor and methods of protection rather than metal plate, and I wanted to reflect that in Cassius's design. Uma is the only one holding a holy symbol. While they all technically have some form of holy symbol on their armor, I wanted to imply Uma's faithful ritual tendencies. Titus has more cushion and padding in his clothing for his dense dwarven body, and he also has large solid plates instead of a lot of layered plates like Rusonia and Aemilius do. And Rusonia and Aemilius do have a very similar overall composition and structure to their armor, but Aemilius has a lot more shoulder armor and Rusonia has very segmented leg armor. Just little things like that to indicate different fighting styles, movements, and priorities in battle. Even with the differences, it's still a lot of metal to be rendering, and in general, I like rendering metal, but how is it that I always end up in positions where I'm either rendering a tiny bit of metal per drawing, or everyone is in full metal plate, or there are complicated robotics involved? All or nothing, never something in between. But that being said, I do usually work in bronze and gold, so it was really enjoyable working in silvers and gray. I had some red undertones and blue reflections in the metal, and I really like how the color balanced out. But on that note, we have come to the end of this week's drawing. We can all take a big old deep breath and give a sigh of relief. Behold, the Paladins of Caritania. I was working on this piece a little later than I should have been, and I do spy a couple of floating pauldrons that are not attached to anything. And also looking at the final piece, I realized I forgot to put Uma's earrings back in. But other than that, I love these characters so much. I'm very partial to Rusonia. Not to spoil anything, but I mayhaps am in the process of designing a new set of D&D characters for 2025 campaigns, and Rusonia inspired a couple more characters. But before I close out this video, I wanted to do a little something to make this picture of the Paladins feel more whole. There, finally they are all together as was intended. What a bittersweet picture. I think I should probably be a little more concerned about the fact that I was recently asked by the DM for the names of all of Fing's companions about a year into the campaign. That feels very concerning. So I don't know if I should be holding out on the hope that I will see any of them again, or if I should just be concerned at the prospect of them coming up in the story, but who knows? Not me.